Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our weekly Meet the Artist chat. My name is Tommy Hensel, and I am the director of the Fine and Performing Arts Center at Moraine Valley Community College. Moraine Valley is located in Palos Hills, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. It's a southwest suburb of Chicago. And like everybody, for the last however many thousands of days it feels like, our theater has been closed. And we're actually, we think, going to be dark through December. So we decided, since we weren't presenting anything and we couldn't highlight the artists on the stage, that what we would do is reach out to primarily artists that we've had on our stage in the past few years. And then coming up in the next few months, you'll see some artists that are scheduled later on that maybe you haven't seen before. But right now we're focusing on people that have been on our stage recently, whose shows were very popular. And as I say every week, in full disclosure, I'm picking people that I like and I want to hang out with and want to have a conversation with. So it's just kind of me having a conversation with somebody I like a lot that's a friend, and you're all voyeurs watching it, but it's kind of fun, I hear. So without further ado, I'm excited to welcome to the broadcast studio one of my favorite people in the performing arts industry, an awesome human being and an amazing illusionist and magician. I'm going to welcome Bill Blagg to our stream. There you are.
Just like that. What's going on, Tommy?
Poof. There you are. No, I'm doing okay. I was just telling you, I'm settled in my kitchen, so I'm good. I have a glass of Pinot Noir. I'm ready to go.
I'm on that coffee. I got a 6-month-old son, so this is my time to get some work done at night. So little go juice for me.
Stay awake. Stay awake.
Pretty much.
So I'm calling in from my home in Berwyn, Illinois, which is just west of Chicago. It's a suburb. Where are you tonight?
I'm in Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. So literally right over the border.
Oh, okay. So right over the Illinois border.
Right over the border. Like, you go over the border, boom, Pleasant Prairie. You wait too long, you hit Kenosha, you went too far.
There you go.
It's a blink.
You can tell I'm not from the Midwest, so I don't know my geography all that well.
Everybody knows it's Jelly Belly Factory. That's what everybody comes here for.
What I do know is when I drive towards Milwaukee, I pass that the big cheese palace.
Mars Cheese.
Yeah. So I know where that is.
That's good stuff.
It is good stuff.
That's good stuff.
You know what's funny is that when this pandemic started and I was quarantining, a friend of mine in Wisconsin sent me a link to this place. I think it's way further in northern Wisconsin, called Cheese Brothers. That's a small family-owned place that ships out awesome cheese. So, you know. And
they're in Illinois?
No, they're Wisconsin.
Oh, they're Wisconsin. I was going to say, Illinois cheese.
No. It's Wisconsin cheese. Believe me. Yeah, it's pretty good stuff. So, yeah. And it's funny, when I moved to the Midwest, I had never heard of a cheese curd.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well,
they're not real unless they squeak. They got to squeak.
So,
that is the real one.
Awesome. So, what I'm excited about in all of these interviews is actually having a chance to just chat with people that I know and I've known for a long time. But, most of our conversations, even though we've had some personal conversations, have been sort of framed by our jobs and at work. So we haven't had a chance, and we'll talk about, obviously, work tonight. But I like to ask questions sometimes that sort of get us to know the artists a little bit more.
Sure.
And so one of the questions that I've been asking everybody, and I think everybody that I've interviewed, with one exception before you, has been primarily a musician, except for Mallory Lewis and Lamb Chop. And of course, her background is so specific, but it's still, I think the question applies. And my question is always, so how did it start for you? Like, when you were a little kid, what did you want to be when you grow up? And then how did this happen? How did the magic happen?
This is going to sound crazy, but I wanted to be I can't remember ever wanting to be anything else but a magician. And from a very young age, I saw a magician come to my elementary school in Zion, Illinois, and they put on just a school assembly program. And I remember thinking it was so much fun and everybody was having a great time and these amazing things were happening. Like, I want to learn some magic. And that started a dialogue through the mail with my great-grandfather out in California, who happened to dabble in magic a little bit. So he would write me and give me little tips on magic tricks that I could build with things at home. And it pretty much just took off from there. I've never wanted to do anything else.
Wow. So yeah, that's kind of awesome because so many people struggle with what do I want to be when I grow up? They want to be an astronaut and they want to be this and that and that, and they
Right.
change their major 14 times in college. So so well, I kind of did that. Six. I changed my major 6 times, only six.
That's not too bad.
But that's kind of cool. So I want to come back a little bit later to your great grandfather's story because I think that's a really awesome story. But something occurred to me when I was looking at sort of some of the PR in advance of this interview, and there's a question I've never asked anybody who tours with a magic show like yours. Is we hear the term magician and we hear the term illusionist. Are they different, and how are they different?
They are. So the best way to describe it is a lot of times people would associate it typically with the size of a trick. So if you have a big box or some large prop, most people would say, hey, that's an illusion. A magic trick would be a little something you pull out a deck of cards, like, hey, show me a magic trick. But what it really comes down to from an art standpoint is a magic trick is something that's done and performed with the simple goal of leaving the person going, man, how did he do that? That was really cool.
Okay.
Well, that was neat. How did he do that? Whereas when you do illusion, not using it as a noun to describe a prop, but to describing art, illusion is going past that level of just doing something that's amazing where they're going, oh man, how do you do that? That was cool. And hitting them in such a different way where it was like, that was incredible. And the thought of how did it happen goes away. So it's layering those other pieces of the art together, the music, the story, the lights, the plot, the narrative, putting all those pieces in play behind it. So it's not just a trick. You're doing something much more and telling a story and taking the people somewhere.
So the Magic of Bill Blagg, the show that you're have been touring for a while, what is that? Do you describe yourself as an illusionist or a magician or both? Or
I would say it's a combination, but more so the show as a whole is more that narrative theme plot focus as opposed to being focused on the individual tricks. It's about the experience that the audience gets. So we have some of those moments in the show where I'll call it the magic tricks, where you're doing some interactive things with the audience just for simple fun and sheer jaw dropping, like, okay, that was really cool. Then you have the other stuff where you get back into the theme of where the show's going and drive them along using magic as the motivator, so to speak. So awesome. It's a combo.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and of course, I've seen your show. We've presented it, so I kind of get that. We've presented other shows over the years, like we had the Spencer's Theater of Illusion.
Yeah, Kevin, good guy.
And then I had James Galea, the magician from Australia.
Okay, yeah.
But his show was really interesting because it was small format magic. So we had a videographer on stage with him and a big screen, and the videographer was doing close-up of all of this magic so that the audience could watch it while it was happening. It was a really interesting hybrid kind of show.
Sure.
And I think audiences, I think both kinds make people go, oh my God, how did that happen? How did he do that? Right. So do you remember, like, way back when you first got interested in magic, what was the very first trick that you feel like you mastered, that you thought, I got it?
The first one that I mastered, I actually have it right here. That's funny that you ask. And it's like sitting over here on my desk. I did it in fifth grade for a fifth grade talent competition with my fifth grade teacher. And it was taking a pocket silk handkerchief, you tuck it into your hand, and you open your hand, and it completely disappears.
Okay.
And then you're able to grab it right back out of the air. So we played this invisible game of catch with this handkerchief across the gymnasium for the talent competition. So that was the first one.
Did you win?
No.
Darn.
I think there was like a dance troupe or something. It was a big ensemble, and they were good. They were good.
Okay.
So.
We'll give them that.
He took a strong second, I believe. He took a strong second.
Well, that's cool. So that's kind of cool, though. You remember that first trick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's circle back around because you mentioned it was your great grandfather, right?
Correct, my great grandfather.
So, tell me a little bit about that story, because you told us in the last show. The show that we presented was the one where you started to integrate that story as part of the plot of your show, and I found it really compelling. So, talk to us a little bit about that.
So, my great grandfather, he would write me. We were great pen pals, and we would write these letters back and forth. And he would give me tips on tricks and stuff that I could build with everyday objects around the house. I remember one of the first ones with like an empty cardboard tube from toilet paper, which people probably hoarding those nowadays too. But so it would just be things around the house that I could make magic tricks with. And then I'd use those tricks to put on magic shows for my classmates in school. And then for my 10th birthday, he sent me, and they're actually hanging out back here on my shelf, he sent me 3 books called the Harlan Tarbell Course in Magic for my birthday. And he had them, they were from the first edition. He had them from 1952.
Wow.
And he passed them on to me as a surprise for my birthday. And 3 volumes of these things. I mean, that literally became the foundation. I would study those books day in, day out, always trying to learn the new magic inside of them. And it really, that was a big motivator. And I would call it a pivotal moment that kind of propelled things to where we are today.
So did he actually do professional magic himself?
He didn't do professional magic. He was a traveling salesman, so he traveled the world. And he also wrote jingles and poetry and short stories. So he had a whole big combination, but he would dabble in magic just as something fun to do. And he would use it in his professional sales just for icebreakers and things of that nature. But he never actually got on a stage and performed.
Oh, okay. Well, but that's so cool then that he had those great books to share with you. So did you ever, in going through those books, did you ever find any of his like notes that he wrote in the books or anything?
No, there were no notes in the books, but he would continue to write me letters, and I saved all the letters that he wrote me. And he would write me letters and just ask me about the different tricks. And I could tell that he had been through the books extensively himself, because he would point out some of his favorites, and without even having the book there to reference, he's like, "Hey, have you got to this one yet? This one's really cool. Wait till you see this one in volume 3." So it was a real cool connection that we were able to have and share that through the old school way of communicating with pen and paper and stamps and envelopes.
Wow, that's just actually really cool though, because it's this interesting connection, and obviously it kind of skipped over some generations. So were other people in your family, like what your grandfather or your grandmother or your father or mother, were any of them interested in magic at all?
No. So my dad has always been a huge fan of ventriloquism, but he has massive stage fright. So his dream as a kid was to be a ventriloquist one day, but they just didn't have any idea on how to start or where to go. My grandfather owned a heating and air conditioning company and was also a fire chief. So he was always busy, working, taking care of the family and that sort of thing. So, my dad got involved in the trades. And fortunately, with his heating and air conditioning background, he's very skilled with metalwork. So my dad actually fabricates a bunch of the magic and illusions that we feature in our show.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I didn't realize that.
It's like his way to be a part of the whole mix without having to physically get on the stage. But he's got a bunch of ventriloquism figures, and he goes to the vent conventions and all that stuff. He loves it. But I told him, I said, you got to put together a routine and jump on stage. But it's the stage fright. You just can't get past it.
So you need to connect him with Mallory Lewis.
I do.
Yeah, you do. I mean, he would love to hang out with Lamb Chop.
He would probably have a great time.
So we had a couple of questions from. I'm gonna have to give up and put on my glasses. So we're skipping around
here too. Oh, here we go.
Time a little bit, but my friend Mary Stewart asked, "Is there a new trick or illusion you're currently working on?"
Oh, Mary, we're working on a bunch of stuff right now, Mary. We have. I don't want to ruin it. We're doing a major shift and change to our touring show. Okay. Obviously, nobody knows what touring is going to be when it comes back, but we can all agree that it's going to change in a certain manner, specifically with how interactive our show is with audience members coming up on stage and magic taking part on that. So we've been focusing on taking illusions and audience members from just being a couple people to being the entire audience. And having experiences that are happening to everybody throughout the show, in addition to the things that we feature on stage. But we have a bunch of new full-scale illusions from the size prop standpoint that we're putting together, and we also have a brand new. We're bringing another layer. So our current tour that was out talked a lot about my great-grandfather and that background, and the fact that I never met him, which is the craziest part of all of this. He was so influential, and I never met him before. We only knew each other through the mail.
Mhm.
And so now we're going to be bringing in a new layer into the show. And I don't want to spoil what it is.
Okay, no, don't spoil it. But
the audience is going to get to know more. I tell everybody, I'm like, when people leave the show, I want them to be like, man, I'm having Bill over for some meatloaf and some beer. I'll be like,
and some cheese curds.
Cheese curds.
Come on.
From the cheese guys in Wisconsin.
Come on. So we'll talk at some point because, as you know, all of us have had sort of pushed our seasons ahead in time. Mm-hmm. And I'm already working on the 21-22 season because of that. But we'll have to talk about maybe you coming back in the spring of 22, maybe, because your show will be touring by then.
It's going to be new and different. I'll still probably be bald though.
Well, me too. So my friend Margaret Lehner has a question for us. To date, what is your favorite illusion or trick?
Margaret, I have two. First one is my dancing handkerchief. So it's a pocket handkerchief that I won a national competition with when I was 18 years old. It's actually, Keller was a famous illusionist and was one of the first ones to ever perform it, along with the famous Blackstone family of magic. So that one for me is always a personal favorite. He's getting a facelift right now. So he's going to get a little rework. The routine's been out for 22 years now.
Yeah,
that's crazy
awesome
to say.
I have to say, I love that trick.
So we're amping it up. And then I would say my other favorite, because it took us so long, is our hoverboard. And we've had it out of the show for a number of years. Mm-hmm. But it took us 13 years to finally bring that thing on stage in front of a live audience and fly around on stage. And so it's coming back.
So on your YouTube channel, are there any videos that involve the hoverboard?
Nope.
Okay.
We've kept it a little secret. We did feature that on our pay-per-view Behind the Magic. Okay. So people can get a little sneak peek on that, but it is going to be in our new touring show.
So is that pay-per-view still available if people want to?
It is, absolutely. So we did a pay-per-view where it's 30 minutes. It's available if people just go to billblagg.com/BTM, like Behind the Magic, BTM Live. Huh? And that will take them right to the site where they're able to purchase a digital pass for $9.99 for the whole family. A bunch of magic happens in your hands at home, and you get a sneak peek into our secret warehouse and a little bit more behind the scenes on our show, and a bunch of cool stuff that nobody knows coming to the live show. Get that.
So it actually just redirected me to mob.studio. Okay, cool. I'm going to actually add that banner.
Okay.
So that's a URL if somebody wants to type that in to have a chance to watch that pay-per-view, which I did 2 weeks ago. It's awesome. It's really quick. It's a nice, succinct, amount of time, so you don't feel like you're there for a super long time. And in full disclosure, he says this: you have to. There's a card trick, and you're going to have to tear up the card. So either print out the cards that he offers you the ability to print out, or use an old deck that you don't mind tearing up some cards. But
right, we got some interactive stuff happening there. What we're real excited about is we were about to release our new Sawn in Half illusion on our tour, and the date that was coming up for that release obviously didn't happen with everything that was taking place. So that was a great format. If people check out that show, they're going to see the world premiere of myself getting cut in half.
I know, and it's pretty impressive.
It was cool. I loved it.
Yeah, and what I love about it is the camera work that you did in that special, the people that you had working with you. Mm-hmm. It's clear that it was not post-produced to make the illusion work. You know what I mean?
No, it was all. I mean, everything people saw was live, happening in the moment with us.
Yep. So this is the specific URL for the live stream, but you can get a lot more information on this website, billblagg.com. And I'll put this back up for everybody a little bit later in the show. I'm going to hide it for now. But yeah, I really loved that pay-per-view. I thought I had a lot of fun with that. And I must admit, I had my 4 cards, and I afterwards I was like, how did that happen?
Right.
How did he do this magic card trick remotely? And it worked, but it works.
And that's that type of interactive engagement is what we're infusing into our larger touring show.
Awesome.
So there's going to be a lot of really unique moments with everybody in the audience all having a similar experience, whether it's with their cell phone. something in their purse, in their wallet, a bunch of different. It's going to be a ton of fun.
Cool. We got a little hello from our mutual friend Heather Massey.
What's up, Heather?
Hey, hi Heather. Good to see you online. Thanks. So that's great. Thanks everybody for the awesome questions, by the way, because one of the things that I will totally tell you in full disclosure about all of these interviews is that with the exception of the "how did it start when you were a kid" question, I have no frigging clue what I'm going to ask anybody at any point during this. It just comes out. So poof. Yeah, so thanks for giving me some fodder for questions.
There you go. It's like Magic and Tommy Unplugged. Here we go. We're just
it is Tommy Unplugged.
Tommy Unplugged.
All my cookbooks and my chart of wine grapes behind
me. We talked about that.
Yeah, it's not a periodic chart, folks. It's actually periodic chart of wine grapes.
It's wine grapes, and we were talking before the broadcast about having them turn that into like an advent calendar, so you can open it up, grab a different grape. Yeah, it'd be a fascinating episode, about 45 minutes.
Pinot Noir is like smack dab in the middle of that chart. Medium acidity, medium body, good going. Actually, I just started the last Wednesday. I started my level 2 sommelier training. Yeah, so I've got my 1. I'm moving on to level 2 now. So.
Tommy's a big deal, folks. If you don't know, he's a big deal in the kitchen. He knows his wine. He knows his pairings. He's got it all laid out. Don't let him fool you. He knows exactly what's happening.
I actually have to say I am good at food and wine pairing. That's that I'm good at.
If somebody picked him a dandelion from outside, brought it inside, and say, "Hey, what would you drink with this?" He would know. He would know how to put it together.
Yeah, it's bitter, so don't drink tannic wines with that. Like a sweet wine with dandelions. Okay, there you go. So poof. Poop. There we go. So I want to get back a little bit. So we talked about your very first trick that you mastered. And then in the 5th grade, and then you mentioned earlier that you won that national competition when you were 18,
right?
With the handkerchief.
Yep.
Right. So after that, did you end up going off to college? If you did, what did you study? What was your kind of focus at that point after you won that competition?
So I won the competition, and I had some opportunities to go on the road as part of an ensemble style show. So it'd be multiple magicians. And so I would be doing my handkerchief routine as well as another routine for my 15, 20-minute slot in the show. And coming out of high school, it was a huge opportunity because to me, that was like the first chance of being like, oh, hey, I can go do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I was about to go do that instead of going to college. And I reached out to a gentleman in the magic industry that I respect and have known for a number of years. Met him when I was 16. His name is Jim Steinmeier. He's the brains behind a lot of the magic that you've seen on TV, Ricky Jay, a bunch of the Broadway shows, all the magic that happens, like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin's Floating Carpet. That's Jim. And I reached out to him for some advice about the opportunities, and he told me there's never any substitute for education. And he sent me a little book by Lance Burton called Advice, and basically was like, you can always go join a show. You're not always going to want to go to college.
Yeah.
So I ended up making the decision to go to college. I went to Carthage College in Kenosha. So here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Carthage on the water, and graduated from there in 2002 with a bachelor's degree in communications and marketing and a minor in business.
Oh, that's smart. See, knowing that you're going to be a touring artist,
mm-hmm.
You got the marketing and the accounting kind of background.
Absolutely. The business side is, well, as you know, there's so much work behind the scenes in this business. The show feels like it's 8 to 10% when you get all set and done with everything.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Well, it's called show business.
Right.
And believe me, we all understand right now during this pandemic, we understand the business piece.
Amen.
Of the show business.
And the people that don't, they're learning it, unfortunately.
There ain't none right now. So yeah, we're all hyper aware of that. But yeah, I mean, I think people forget sometimes. I mean, in audiences, I get it, because an audience isn't coming to know what happened before they got there. They're coming to experience something, which is the magic of live performance.
Right.
But sometimes I think it's great when audiences maybe learn later what went into the actual creation of that magical 90 minutes that they spent with these artists in this.
Absolutely. State. Yep.
Yep. And of course, I have to say kudos on the college thing. We did not prompt you to say that because I work at a college. It's always good to hear, go to college to people. And I'm sure that Margaret Lehner appreciates that because she's also works at Moraine Valley. And so Mary Stewart does as well. So priming people to stay.
I wouldn't trade it for anything. I actually went back to Carthage this last fall and gave a presentation at their Aspire conference talking about dreams, goals, using the liberal arts education. And I was looking in my freshman year going, what am I going to learn here that's going to help me become a touring illusionist or magician?
Yep.
Literally the attitude that I had. And I walked out going, holy cow. I mean, my toolbox was filled with a bunch of different tools and I use them every single day.
Yep. It's funny because when I do go, I'm on the board of NAPAMA, which is the North American Performing Arts Managers and Agents. And one of the initiatives we have is this thing called Performing Arts Connect, where we send an agent and an artist and a presenter into college classrooms to talk to students about this presenting industry. Right. And one of the things we always say is, God, I wish that somebody had done that when I was in college to tell me how to make it work, not just how to get a good headshot and how to write a resume, but if you're going to represent yourself, if you're going to be self-employed, you have to know how to do everything. I know Nancy is probably on the other end of going, I get that.
Right.
So Mary Stewart threw up another interesting question, and I love this question. Here it is. Can you tell us about a time things didn't quite go as planned during a show? That's probably never happened to you, has it, Bill?
No, you know what? It did twice. The most recent time, it was 5-6 years ago. We were in Galesburg, Illinois at the Orpheum Theater. So this is probably the most classic, the best one. We're at the Orpheum Theater. I just did a big illusion. It emitted a bunch of smoke, and we tested everything earlier. Everything was fine, but for some reason during the show at that moment, the fire alarm in the building decides to go off. So everybody's thinking it's part of the show. So the fire alarm's going off. I get back. I'm on the stage. The alarm's going off. Well, with it being an older vaudeville style house.
Yeah, I know it well.
We have these big systems that we tour with, as you're familiar with. They're called power distros that tie into the live 300 or 3-phase service coming into the buildings. So this is what we use to power all the fancy light rigs and everything else when the tours come through. So we use these distros. We don't just plug into an outlet on the wall. Well, we weren't aware of this, but the electrician had patched our distro into the panel that powers the fire system. So when the alarm went off, it killed the power.
Oh, no.
Our whole rig went down, but the venue lights were still working. So our next illusion was our closer, and it was the hoverboard. And I'm literally on stage, and I'm looking at, and I see my guy in the production. He's out there going like this, and I'm like, "What?" And I hear from behind the curtain, Miles is back there like, "Coo, coo," and they're trying to slide me notes, and I can't read what they're writing. And I'm finally like, "Ladies and gentlemen, my crew is trying to give me some type of message. Can you tell me what's going on?" And my guy, I look at him, I'm like, "Jeremy, what do you want?" He's like, "I want you to go backstage." I'm like, in front of a sold out house. I'm like, "You want me to go backstage right now?" He's like, "Yes." So I run backstage. They're like, "Power's out. Here, boom. Go do a card trick." Boom. They give me a bunch of stuff, roll me back out there with the table. Turns out all of a sudden I got a note that was slid underneath halfway through the card trick, said "Power's on, hoverboard's a go." And I don't think the audience missed the beat. They thought it was part of the show.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's always the best part when they're like, "That was so cool how you planned the fire alarm."
Yeah.
But we've never had a trick go wrong or, an illusion fail in front of the crowd. And I think that just comes back to my team. Like, we work very hard, and we dot the I's and cross the T's, and we spend a lot of time rehearsing, going through the stuff that we present to make sure it goes smooth every single night.
So when you're creating a new illusion, let's say like the hoverboard illusion, how long does that take from your concept to when it goes in front of an audience usually?
The hoverboard took 13 years.
Wow.
It was the longest one. We couldn't figure it out. We had the idea. We had some general ideas on apparatus. I can skateboard fairly well. I mean, I don't do crazy tricks. But when you get 3-4 feet up in the air and you're standing on one foot zipping across the stage, it's a whole different ball of wax. So there was a bunch of mobility things to worry about, as well as the illusion itself and getting that all worked in. But we finally did it. I would say anywhere though, depending, it could take from 6 months to a year, up to, like I mentioned, the hoverboard, 13 years. The sign and half illusion I did on Behind the Magic, that was 7.5 years. And we found about 8 different ways that illusion doesn't work, and finally found the way that it did work. I was this close to giving up on it. I almost was just going to toss my hands in the air. But then my wife said to me, she's like, "You never give up on anything." And I'm like, "You're right. Here we go."
It's always good to have that person behind you going, just keep on pushing.
Right.
So in the case, I know in the pay-per-view, you talk about the person with whom you collaborated for that trip, who has since, I think, passed away, you said.
Yes.
Who was that? And tell me a little bit about that person, because I didn't know his name.
Okay. His name is Don Wayne. So Don Wayne was one of the most prolific magic creators. A lot of, I guess you put it this way, like David Copperfield back in the 80s, early 90s, a bunch of his magic and his TV specials, the man behind it, the guy was Don Wayne. So Don came up with like David's walking through the Great Wall of China, the vanishing Learjet. Don and Jim Steinmeier, who I mentioned earlier, collaborated together on the vanishing Statue of Liberty. So a bunch of the hit illusions that David had in his tour back in the late 80s, early 90s, that was Don Wayne that created them. So he was the guy who created my Dancing Hank.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the Don Wayne Dancing Handkerchief. So after I won that competition, I called him on the phone just to introduce myself. And I remember him picking up, and I'm like, "Hi, my name's Bill Blagg, and I'd love to work with you someday." And that was the day that we started a friendship that lasts for a number of years. So we worked on a ton of different things in the show. Hoverboard was a big one. The Sawing in Half was another large one. The current opening appearance that was in our last show with the glass box where I show up out of nowhere, that was a Don Wayne effect. So he was a wonderful guy. I miss him every single day, and loved our talks about the business and just our chats about life in general. But he had a really unique way of looking at things and making you look for a simple solution. Not spend money, not change the prop, not add something on, but look for a simple solution. And 9 out of 10 times he could solve it with a piece of string, some Velcro, and a paper clip.
So Margaret has a question for us. What advice would you give to a budding illusionist?
Go to college. Go to college. No, the best advice I ever got, I mean, I've had a lot of advice over the years, but the best advice at the time that I received it, I actually thought I was getting blown off, which, maybe I was, but it turned out to be the best advice. I met David Copperfield for the first time when I was 15 years old. And I remember meeting him, and I said, I waited purposely at the end of the line to be the last one. And I was like, "Hi, David, my name's Billy Blagg. I want to become an illusionist and tour and do what you're doing. Can I have a few minutes of your time?" And he's like, I don't have time right now. We got another show. And I'm like, "But can you give me any type of advice or anything?" And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, "Just keep performing. Just keep doing shows and watch your shows and just keep performing and improving." He's like, "That's the only way to do it."
Yep.
And when I look back, I mean, we've been in this business now over 20 years. That's exactly what we've done. We've kept performing, fine-tuning, looking back, seeing what we're doing, how to improve. And the advice I would always give is there's no shortcuts. There's no shortcuts. You have to, sometimes we call it failing forward. You learn ways that things don't work, you adapt, you change, and you continue to move forward with it. And that's really the only way to do it.
Yep. And I feel like, I'm a performer myself. I'm a singer primarily, but it's the same thing with that. You try some new material, and then it works or it doesn't, or you tweak it. And over time, you learn how you work.
Right. You learn how you work, and you find that the stuff that feels comfortable to you, where you're in your rhythm and you're in your zone with it. I remember for us, like, we were trying a variety of different large illusions, and I had this one where I passed through the blades of a fan, but it was so dramatic, like, oh, and watching it and performing, I'm like, that's not me. Like, I'm not Mr. like, oh, the wind, and so it just didn't work. But that was great to have those experiences to say, okay, that's not me. That's not for me. I need to stay over here in my lane.
That's cool. No, I get that. And honestly, I think for anybody, particularly an artist, you have to kind of realize, you have to learn through experience what what works and what doesn't. Doesn't mean you can't do that illusion, but sometimes it's just not right for you.
Right.
It's like songs. There's a lot of songs I could sing, but why? Because it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit for me.
There's none you want to hear me sing, man. Let me tell you that.
You don't want to see me try to do any kind of illusion, because I would totally be horrible at it.
I try to sing to my kid, and he's like, ah! I'm like, okay, man, all right.
Okay. So I have a question. One of the projects, or one of the programs that you have in addition to the show you do, is something called the Science of Magic.
Yes.
So talk to me about the Science of Magic. I think that's a really cool program.
We have the Science of Magic, as well as another program called Magic in Motion, which are our education components to our touring show. We'll go into performing arts centers. They bust the students in, and we use magic as the motivator to teach the students about fundamental scientific principles and things that meet the national and state standards that they're tested on in class. But it's not a magic secrets reveal type of show. So in the Science of Magic, the students literally learn how magicians use the scientific method, the 5 steps of the scientific method, to be able to create magic, because that's how we do it. We ask a question, we do some research, form a hypothesis, experiment, draw a conclusion. So using those 5 steps together with the students, we'd go through and either make their teacher disappear, make a teacher float midair. And then in between, we're teaching them about their other main principles, such as states of matter, mirrors, light and reflection. They're making their homework disappear. It's highly engaging, it's entertaining, but most of all, the students are learning and they're having a blast when they're doing it. Cool. And so last year we debuted a new one called Magic in Motion, which was about Newton's 3 laws of motion and his law of gravitation. So we have these 2 programs out. Well, not right now, but we had those programs out, inspiring students all across the country, and it really turned into a big passion work for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's an amazing program, and most people who come to a lot of performing arts centers probably know that a lot of us who book artists will book artists who have these outreach programs, both to college students, but also to elementary, middle school, high school, because part of our goal as an educational institution is to teach and educate. And Absolutely. It's amazing for me when it can be through art.
Correct. Yeah, and it connects in a much different way than just somebody saying, hey, this is this, look at this. When you can take this unique thing such as magic and show them something impossible, but at the same time, you're putting these scientific principles and layering it around what they're watching take place, the retention of it is so much greater.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and everybody who's an educator knows if you can connect the hands-on with all the other senses at the same time, the more levels you can get.
Correct.
In the moment, the more likely they're to not just memorize it, but to learn it.
Right. And be excited to learn more.
Yeah, that's the whole point, I think. So just to sort of, I'm batting around in my head with some questions. And one of the questions sort of based on something someone asked earlier, they were asking questions about sort of like the thing that didn't go right. And I asked a question about the first trick, but in all of your touring, is there any like one specific place that stands out to you as like the coolest place that you've performed, or some place that you were just really thrilled to be there?
Yeah, there's so many of them, because I remember as a little kid, like looking at like David Copperfield when he would go on tour and all the places that he would go to, the Paramounts and the Orpheums and all the major performing arts centers. And I'd see these names of these places. So I think for me, being able now to walk into those same buildings, like in February, just this last February, towards the end of our tour at the time, we were in Fort Lauderdale at the Broward Center for the Arts.
Oh, beautiful theater there.
Yeah, that's where David filmed his flying special. So I'm literally standing on the stage looking at the seats for the first time that I remembered as a kid, like, wow, this is where the special took place. I'm on this stage. This is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a ton of those. For me, it was a show in March, though. Like the one that stands out the most, I played a venue in Waukegan, Illinois, the Genesee Theater.
Yeah, I know the Genesee.
Yeah, so I grew up in Zion, and I lived in Zion till I was 18 after graduating high school. And the Genesee was one of the first places that I remember David Copperfield coming to when I was a kid. Then the venue was closed. It opened back up. I saw him there again. And it was always that local place where the big entertainers came that I said, one day I want to play the Genesee. And
you did.
And we did. And then we played Saturday and they were closed on Thursday. So I'm like,
so was that your first time at the Genesee?
that was our first time there.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
It was incredible. We had a packed house. It was unbelievable. And sometimes, as you know, being an artist, you get so caught up in the moment of just performing and making sure everything was set up okay. Life on the road is busy. So we treated it like another day. And, part of me after the fact was like, oh, I wish I could have soaked it in a little bit more. But we had a blast. We had an incredible show. And you know how it is. You get off stage and you're like, oh, what happened? How was it? How did we deal with it? It's like, it just, boom. It's like a blur.
It is. It's funny because, I mean, very often I have no memory of performing.
Yeah, right.
I really don't. It's because you're so into the moment that unless something goes wrong.
Right. Right. Unless something goes wrong, all of a sudden it's like you get off stage and you're like, wow, that was 2 hours?
Yeah.
Okay. Shoot. All right. I guess it's over. And then it's like, oh.
So I noticed, I was on your website and I noticed you've got a gig scheduled in October in Wisconsin.
It is now changing as of 3 hours ago.
Oh, okay. So
we're moving into early 21.
Okay.
And I think we're just going to make I'm going to have some discussion with my agent and stuff, but I think we're just going to make a conscious effort to probably hold off this fall. I think a lot of things are going on in terms of schools and figuring out what that's going to look like, which will impact the educational programs, as well as the touring side of things. The business needs to make sense.
Yeah.
For the presenters as well as for ourselves. And I think there's a lot of stuff to figure out. And I don't necessarily know that I'm comfortable being the guinea pig at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So I'd almost rather just let it breathe for a little bit and let it work and simmer down a little bit.
Our mutual friend Mojo from Mojo and the Bayou Gypsies said to me in a conversation not too long ago, artists do not need to be the canary in the coal mine.
Right. Right.
Artists do not need to be the people that test out, is this going to work?
Right. And that's the last thing I'd want, is I want to make sure everybody's in a good place and that they can experience it without any type of apprehension of, am I safe? Am I okay? Is this environment okay for me to have my family in? Those types of things. I still personally, I think that theaters can be made a very safe environment, regardless of the fact that they have a roof on them or not, because I'm in these places and I watched how meticulously a bunch of these places are maintained and cleaned, and they're a lot nicer than places outside. So.
Honestly, I think that we at our Performing Arts Center, we're ready. We haven't put anything forth to the powers that be to approve anything, but we have protocols that we've designed.
Sure.
Looking at the best practices in the industry. And I feel like when the time comes, we're going to be ready because I've got an amazing staff working with me. I feel like you're right. I think all of us, kind of restaurants are the same way too. They're so used to being meticulous, the good ones, that this just makes us ramp up our game a little bit, but we're not doing anything tremendously different than we would normally do. We're just doing it more thoughtfully, I think. Right.
I would agree.
Back a little bit to like earlier in your career. So you graduated from college. Did you immediately say, now I'm going on tour? Poof. How did
I try to do that in college. So I was working a part-time job at night, second shift, going to school full-time, still trying to be a college student and do that whole fun thing. And I ended up finding a good friend who was in the banking business that pulled a few strings for me and wrote me a loan so I could go on tour. So I put a show together and I was going to go on tour. So I took the money, I rented a couple theaters, one in Indiana, one in Michigan, put together a marketing plan, and I went on tour. And that's the weekend that I learned what I didn't know. So all my projections, that was, I would say it was a great lesson. And those are the lessons that shape you to move you forward. And I remember coming back going, okay, wow, I somehow have to figure out how to pay this off. And so I started picking up more hours at work to do that. But also I started focusing on, okay, what didn't work? And I called those venues and asked a lot of questions and got a lot of great information from them and used that to kind of reshape things. So I custom created my own senior project in college. and it was called Show Production and Management. So I had to produce my own full-scale illusion show in Kenosha.
Wow.
So I applied what I didn't know and what I learned, and I did my own show for my senior project and sold the venue out.
Cool.
So it was 3 years of intense learning. So yeah, I mean, I did a lot right after college, but I mean, I was still doing birthday party shows, corporate events, holiday parties. I mean, you don't just show up and get out of college and like, I'm buying a semi. Here we go.
I'm coming.
No, it didn't work like that. It was the same way it was as a young kid, doing some shows, save a couple bucks.
So we do have a question I want to get to from the audience in a minute, but I do have one thing that came up when you were just talking is that, and I'm not saying this just because it's live and you're on camera, you have the best marketing kit of any artist that I have ever presented in my career.
I appreciate that.
Hands down, the best. You provided every possible piece of information or piece of collateral that I could even imagine that I might want. I didn't use 2/3 of it because I do some of that more, but I never once said, oh crap, I have to rewrite this, or oh, where's a good photo, or blah blah blah, whatever. Everything down to, and in fact, I have to say I plagiarized something that you sent to us, the whole talking points for the box office.
Yes.
So for everybody out there who's watching, one of the things that Bill sent along is a list of things for the box office to say and not to say when people ask questions about the show. And I thought, what a genius thing. So I've now started doing that for every show. I've reached out to artists and agents saying, okay, here's a list of questions that might get asked on the phone. And I don't want you to repeat back to me what's in the brochure. I don't want to read the blurb in the brochure.
Right.
I want, if somebody says, what's this show about? I want to know what you would say. Exactly.
That's your sizzle sentence right there. You got a sizzle sentence. Boom.
Yeah. So kudos to you. So other artists, Bill's the best practice. So, you're going to get a lot of emails now. Heather had a question. Do you have a signature trick or one that you've had from the beginning?
I would say right now it's a dancing handkerchief. It's one of the first ones that I had ever done in a public show. And after winning the competition with it, it's been a staple in our touring show. I talk every year about taking it out, and everybody's like, no, you can't take that out. And so since I can't take it out, it'd be like going to see Neil Diamond and him not singing like Sweet Caroline. Like everybody would get mad. They would get mad. So I think but it's so he's getting an overhaul right now. We're gonna do some fancy. He's got a lot more abilities than he shows to people.
Yeah,
we're gonna up his game.
Okay, so the handkerchief, I'm looking forward to the new like ramped up handkerchief trick.
Mr. Hanky 2.0, baby. He's coming.
So is there anything besides the handkerchief trick that's been fairly consistent for you over the years?
No.
Wow.
No.
That's cool though. That's really cool.
The handkerchief's been the staple all the time. We have a couple other tricks that are just kind of favorites of mine that have been in for a number of years that are going to go. This is a really unique yet a great time to, as I would say, evolve. Mm-hmm. And we're choosing to embrace that and seeing where it will lead us, because I think it's going to create one heck of an experience. And there's going to be no choice. Like, it will have to be this way. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to go that way and do it, we're going to do it. We're going to do it mob style.
It's funny because I was saying to somebody not too long ago, early in my career, I worked at a theater company that didn't have a lot of money, like many theater companies don't have. Mm-hmm. And I feel like looking back on my career sometimes is that the most creative set designs and concepts and directing concepts from me as a director happened in those times when you had no other choice but to make it work with what you had. Mm-hmm. Because you didn't have anything else. And suddenly you have to dig and find something and you're right, find a solution.
Makes you hungry.
And right now, you're right. We're in a situation where touring is not happening and your normal way of doing things is not happening. So how do you, I'm using this word, shoot me, pivot. I'm hearing it too. How do you pivot? I won't use it anymore after this. But how do you shift what you're doing? to align with the situation. And I don't look at it sometimes, I try not to look at it as constraints, even though they really are. I try to look at it as, it's kind of like that thing about crisis and opportunity.
Right.
What are the opportunities right now for all of us as artists and presenters and agents, and to get rid of what wasn't working anyway, and find new ways of doing what we do to reach a broader audience, to reach that audience who can't afford to buy a ticket to come to sit in the theater maybe for 45 or 50 bucks. But
right.
How do we get those people engaged? So yeah, I think you're right. This is an interesting time of creativity right now.
There's a lot of good conversations happening. There's a lot of interesting things happening. I mean, at the end of the day, people still need to make a living, and looking at ways on how they can do that. And, some people might be doing things that they wouldn't have saw themselves doing 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, but it's the way, and that's what they're doing for now. And, for us, we keep looking at the opportunities of saying, okay, hey, what can we introduce that complements the current breadth of shows and products that we have now, that will continue to be something that can be an add-on later on when we are touring again, as opposed to shifting the entire business model away.
Yeah.
Because performing arts, live performing arts, it never dies.
No.
And so it'll be back. It'll be back. And when it comes back, we'll be ready and eager for sure.
Kind of like, you getting through. I kind of look at it. I teach humanities sometimes at the college where I work, and I teach Western humanities from antiquity to 1600. So I encompass the Renaissance as part of that, and what happened with the plague and with all of that, and the fact that so much of that art and science and changes in the world happened partially as a result of the crisis was going on. It forces people to think in a different way.
Absolutely.
So you talked about revamping your show. In a broader sense, do you have like a vision of where you want the Magic of Bill Blagg to go in its next iteration?
I do. So it's a two-way street for me, because I've really found immense value in the education programming that we're doing. I've seen the impact. I've received the letters from the students, the teachers, the parents. I keep them all. I have 2 drawers in my filing cabinet here that are just loaded with the letters. And sometimes when you get those days where it's a bit challenging, to go back and read that and say, hey, this matters, and people are finding true value with this. So what I've done is, in addition, the Magic of Bill Blagg Live, sure, people get to know me, experience some incredible magic. We have a wonderful time. And I will always love that show. Mm-hmm. But now I see a major opportunity, and we're in production right now with what we are calling an e-residency with the Science of Magic, as well as with Magic in Motion. It's not our video of our show broken up into snippets, but it's literally virtual learning and lessons that teachers can come online, and they can take part in the variety of videos that include lesson plans already with them, how they tie into their state standards and their testing standards. And I see this as a way for the future, in the sense that if somebody's learning virtually, then what cooler thing to be at home doing some magic and having the magic, one, happen in their own hands, but it's tying directly into their science and their education studies. So now they're going to get excited. And it just breaks up that mix. And this is something for me that can be here 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. Because unless something else changes, I don't think gravity's going away.
Please. No. No locusts.
Right.
No anti-gravity right now, please.
Yeah. So for me, I would say, a bunch of it is giving people that opportunity with the full touring show to still escape and see something wonderful and incredible. But on the same edge is really pushing hard on the education and providing that vehicle and that avenue to inspire and excite and engage students in this electronic world of learning. Mm-hmm. And being able to, maybe I inspire the next magician or the next scientist or doctor or somebody who watched something in that program and said, hey, this is how this connected with me, and pushed me to go that way. And then that's so much more fulfilling than going, hey, the audience stood up tonight, we got a standing ovation, that was great.
Which is great.
It's great, but I mean, it's you give that, but I feel like the education just continues, and it gives in such a deeper, richer way.
Yeah. So do you feel like the science of magic, do you feel like the curriculum that you've created that would also be something that might integrate into like a base level college curriculum for students who are taking like base level science classes in college?
Possibly. I would say that it would probably be more on the magic in motion.
Okay.
That's going to get more into your physics and your laws of motion. Depending on the age groups of the kids, we'll tailor it a little bit to keep it more push-pull, simple machines, those types of things. But there's so much ability with it on a high school or college level, because now you can really start looking at the formulas, and you can start looking at the forces and looking at the amount of force that you're applying with this rubber band based on the payload, based on the trajectory path. You can really get in depth and come up with a variety of different experiments and magic around that. So it's got a large breadth to it.
Well, I was just thinking about some of my friends at the college where I work who teach science, teach those physics and base level science classes. It might, that might actually be something that could help them with this new sort of world of online learning that all the faculty are having to embrace now.
Yeah. The one of the professors that I know over at Carthage, Tony Barnhart, he actually uses, he's a magician himself, but he's the head of the psychology department, and he does a course on their J term about magic, science, and psychology, about how when magicians hold the deck a certain way or deal cards a certain way, is that different or more effective cognitively? How do people respond to, and it's really interesting. I read his manuscript on it, and I was going to go sit in on a few of his courses in January, but our little guy decided he was going to show up a week early. So
so how old is he now?
He's going to be 6.5 months this Friday.
My gosh.
I know. We just went and got him a car. So we'll start.
Enroll him in college.
Moraine Valley. Here we go. But it's great. It's great. He's a handful, but I love him to death. He's great.
That's awesome. So in the first few months of this year, when you were still touring, was it hard because of having a new baby in the house?
It was a balance, but I mean, we structure our schedule around it to provide me that time at home. We had to reschedule one show because with his due date when he was coming, there was one flight out of South Carolina that was going to go into O'Hare. And if that flight didn't go for some reason, I wouldn't have been home the next day, and that would not be good.
No.
My wife would probably make me disappear. You know what I'm saying? So we opted not to do that, but we slid in a few of the other shows. My wife was at home, so that was good. And they were, fortunately for me, they were local. So we were just up in Madison, something that I could drive for the day and come back. So, but other than that, the big heavy stuff that we had coming up, that was going to be a little bit more of a dynamic and dance, that stuff's all been pushed off to early 21.
Okay, cool. Well, we're just about out of time. Was there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to bring up before we end our time together tonight?
I'm giving my shameless plug right here. If y'all want to learn some magic, the Bill Blagg Professional Magic Kit, you can get it on Amazon. Go to Amazon.com, Bill Blagg. We just signed a really great deal with Amazon. I designed the set. I picked all the tricks that are out in here. So this is great for adults, kids. You can go to billblagg.com. There's a link on the homepage too.
Awesome.
If you're looking to get started in magic, adults, teens, kids, if your kids are driving you crazy and you need something for them to do, go pick up the kit. It's got 375 tricks. You'll keep them busy all day long.
And everybody has Amazon Prime right now. So
right. It's good.
Amazon, and it'll show up on your doorstep in a couple of days.
It's going to improve social skills, creative learning, problem solving. Look at all the benefits to learning magic right now. Not to mention self-confidence. That's what I'm talking about.
So Margaret has a really lovely, this is kind of a nice quote to sort of end our time together. I have to put on my glasses. There's a fascination to magic that captures the human imagination. In our psyche, we hope it's true.
Yes.
And I love that, Margaret. It's true. I think all of us are fascinated when we see a magic trick happen or an illusion, and it makes us go, wow.
Right.
That's what I think. That's what you want as a magician.
Absolutely. And it's that suspending disbelief, sense of wonder.
Yeah.
Trick versus illusion.
And honestly, I have to tell you, even as a presenter who has presented so many different magicians over the years, I'm never backstage with the crew. So I'm always an audience member. Mm-hmm. And I am constantly amazed by all of you, Kevin Spencer, James Galea, all the people that I've presented over the years. Yeah. I have no clue how it happens. But honestly, I don't really want to know.
Good.
I don't want to know. I just want to be amazed.
Yeah, that's the best part. Like finding out. I mean, yeah, is some of this stuff pretty neat? Sure. Some of the technology we're messing with is pretty cool. But at the same time, I think it's more cool. Like I love when somebody fools me with a magic trick. I absolutely love it. When they show me and I'm like, oh, I'm like, don't tell me. I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know. I love it.
I think, honestly, I think that's why that Penn and Teller show, I think they feel the same way. I think they want people to surprise them.
I bet.
Please fool me because I'm jaded and I need to be fooled. And I think it's awesome when somebody does,
Absolutely. There's some really cool stuff that shows up on there.
And our friend Heather gives us a nice closing moment. Thank you. It's been wonderful spending the evening with both of you. And you too, Heather. It's lovely to spend time with you.
Good evening, Heather.
Thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. I'm going to take you out of the stream for a moment, but don't leave. We'll chat afterwards. So thanks, Bill. I'm going to remove you from the stream. Everybody go to Amazon, order your professional magic kit today. You'll have to tell me if people order, Bill. I really want to know. So thanks, Bill. We'll chat more in a minute. And everybody check out billblagg.com. And if you haven't had a chance to see the recording of the live stream, please click through to that. It's really awesome. So Bill, I'll talk to you in just a minute. Thanks so much. Good. So thank you so much, everybody. I so appreciate you tuning in tonight. Next week, I'm interviewing two of my favorite performers who are local Illinois people, Jody Beach and Jim McDowell, who are part of the Jody Beach Trio. They live in Rockford, Illinois, but they tour all over the place. And they recently performed as part of our Salon series. So if you don't know, we have our main stage series, which is what Bill was part of, on the big stage. And then we have a smaller cabaret style theater space that seats about 125 people. And we do cabaret performances. And Jody and Jim were part of a show there recently that was just spectacular. And I wanted to have a chance to highlight them because I think they're awesome people. They're amazingly talented, but they're also just wonderful, amazing human beings. And I think you're going to have a really lovely time meeting them. If you go to our website, you will see and follow our Facebook page and all of our social media. I have Meet the Artist talks planned now all the way through mid-September. And I have some amazing people coming up. And I've got a couple of surprising potential people that one just said yes to me. I'm not going to tell you who it was because it's somebody pretty famous that I love. And another person that's pending, depending on when they're not quarantining where they are right now because they're in a place with bad internet. But I have some really cool people coming up. And this, for me, is a super amount of fun because, I'm not at the theater and I can't present art to you right now, but at least I can actually introduce you to some of these amazing people that are my friends that you have seen. So hopefully I'll see everybody next week for Jody and Jim and moving through August with Pat Hazel and David Wannen. And the ladies from Farewell Angelina and a bunch of other amazing people. So stay with us. Please tell your friends about it. Come back every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central. And with that, I say good evening to you all, and I hope to see you again soon.